Robert shoved her hand away so hard she nearly fell off the bed. "I said no, Amelia. What is wrong with you?" 30 nights, 30 times she had reached for her husband, 30 times he had pushed her away, and tonight he pushed her like she was something he couldn't stand to touch. She sat on the edge of the mattress, her wrist throbbing, her throat locked tight. She would not cry. She refused to cry. But his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He snatched it up, and in the glow of that screen she saw something that stopped her heart completely. He was smiling. If this story speaks to something you've felt before, please subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and follow Amelia's journey all the way to the end. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. Amelia Carter had always believed that love, real love, was something you built slowly, brick by brick, through the ordinary moments that most people never noticed. It was in the way you handed someone their coffee before they asked. It was in the way you laughed at the same commercial for the 4th time because it still struck both of you funny. It was in the warmth of a hand on a shoulder when words felt too heavy to carry. Amelia had believed in all of it. She had built her entire life around that belief. She was 34 years old. She had a career that she had fought for, a home that she had helped design from the ground up, and a marriage that she had quietly, fiercely protected for 9 years. She was not a woman who gave up easily. She was not a woman who asked for much. But there was one thing she had always counted on, one thing she had always returned to like a compass finding north, and that was the certainty that Robert Brooks, her husband, her partner, the man she had chosen above every other possibility, still wanted her there. That certainty had been dying for 30 days, and she had been trying not to notice. The first night it happened, she told herself he was tired. Robert had been working long hours on a new development deal, a mixed-use property on the east side of the city that he had been chasing for the better part of a year. She understood ambition. She had her own. She didn't begrudge him his exhaustion. She kissed him on the shoulder, said goodnight, and turned off the light. The second night she told herself the same thing. The third night she reached for his hand under the covers, and he shifted away in his sleep, or what she assumed was sleep, and she lay there in the dark for a long time, listening to him breathe, wondering if she was being too sensitive. By the 7th night she had stopped telling herself stories. She simply reached for him the way a woman reaches for something she's afraid she's already lost, and she waited, and he said, "Amelia, please, I'm exhausted," in a voice that held no apology, no tenderness, no awareness of what that word please actually meant coming out of his mouth in that context. It meant stop. It meant not you. It meant not now and maybe not ever, and I don't want to explain why. She pulled her hand back. She said nothing. She stared at the ceiling. By the 12th night she had started counting. She didn't write it down. She wasn't that kind of woman, the kind who documented wounds like evidence, who kept spreadsheets of injuries. She simply found that her mind had started keeping track the way the body keeps track of pain automatically without permission, because the nervous system records what the heart tries to dismiss. 12 nights, 12 no's, 12 gentle or not so gentle, pushes back into her own space. She tried different approaches. She made his favorite dinner, the slow-braised short ribs that took 4 hours and required a particular kind of patience she was running out of. She lit candles. She put on the dress he used to compliment every time she wore it. She reached for him across the table during dinner, covered his hand with hers, and looked at him with everything she still felt. He squeezed her hand once. Then he asked if she had seen his phone charger. That was the 15th night. "Robert," she said that night after dinner, after the dishes, after he had settled into the couch with the remote and the distracted expression that had become his permanent face when he was home, "can we talk, Ma, about what?" He didn't look up. "About us." Now he looked up. There was something in his eyes, not guilt, not softness, something more like calculation, a brief moment where she could see him deciding how to manage this. "Amelia, I'm not in the mood for a heavy conversation tonight. Can it wait?" "It's been waiting," she said quietly, "for 15 nights. He put the remote down. He turned to face her. He did the thing she had learned over 9 years of marriage meant he was about to be careful rather than honest. He folded his hands. He took a breath. He put on a measured, reasonable expression. "I've been under an enormous amount of pressure," he said. "This deal is more complicated than I anticipated. The financing fell through twice. I'm managing 3 contractors who can't agree on a timeline. I come home and I'm completely depleted. I don't have anything left. That's not about you." "It feels like it's about me," she said. "It's not. And he said it with such calm certainty, such quiet authority, that she almost believed him. That was the thing about Robert. He had always had the kind of voice that made doubt feel irrational. She had loved that about him once. Now it frightened her in a way she couldn't quite name. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I hear you." She went to bed. He stayed on the couch for another 2 hours. By the 20th night, Amelia had stopped initiating with desire. She had started initiating with something more desperate and more frightening: the need for proof. The need to know she was still visible to the man who had promised to see her. She reached for him, not because she needed him specifically, but because she needed to know she could still reach him. That the distance between them was circumstantial and not structural. That he was still her husband in every meaningful sense of that word, and not just a man who shared her mortgage and her last name and her dinner table. He said no, again. "Amelia, I told you I'm tired, I know." She sat up. The room was dark, but she could see his profile, the familiar line of his jaw, the way he was already settling back into sleep, already done with this conversation, before it had a chance to become one. "Robert, I need you to hear me. I need you to actually hear me right now." He made a sound, not a word. A sound. "Something is wrong," she said. "Something is wrong between us, and I don't know what it is, but I need you to tell me. I need you to at least acknowledge that something is wrong." There was a long silence, long enough that she thought he might have actually fallen asleep. Then, "Nothing is wrong. You're overthinking it. Go to sleep, Amelia." She lay back down. She did not sleep. By the 25th night, she had changed tactics completely. She stopped reaching for him physically. She started observing. She watched him the way she had never watched him before, with the careful, almost clinical attention of someone who suspects the map they've been using is wrong and is trying to read the actual terrain. She watched the way he held his phone slightly angled away, the screen brightness turned down even when she was on the other side of the room. She watched the way he sometimes left the room to take calls in the hallway, and when she asked who it was, he always had an answer ready. Client, contractor, his brother, his business partner. Always someone with a professional title, a reasonable explanation, a story that held together on the surface. She watched the way he looked at his phone when a message came in at dinner. The way his expression changed for just a fraction of a second, a small involuntary brightening, like someone had opened a window in a closed room. And then he would put the phone face down and pick up his fork and say, "You were saying," as if nothing had happened. She was saying nothing. She had already stopped saying things. She had started listening instead, the way you listen when you already know the answer and you're just gathering the courage to admit it. By the 28th night, she couldn't eat. She sat across from Robert at a dinner she had made and could not taste watching him scroll through something on his phone with that same private expression, that same careful distance, and she thought, "I don't know this man." Or worse, "I know exactly who this man is, and I have been refusing to see it." "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine. Busy." He didn't look up. "What did you have for lunch?" "I grabbed something at my desk." He still didn't look up. "With who?" Now he looked up, just briefly, just long enough to assess. "Alone," he said. "I ate alone. I had a sandwich." "Why?" "Just wondering," she said. "You never eat alone." He set his phone down. He looked at her with that measured expression. "Amelia, what is happening with you lately? You've been strange." "Strange," she repeated. "Distant, watchful, like you're waiting for something." She thought about telling him right then. She thought about putting everything she suspected on the table between them, like evidence at a trial, and watching his face when he had to decide whether to lie or confess. But she didn't, because she didn't have proof yet, and because she knew Robert. She knew that without proof, he would turn it around. He would make her the irrational one, the paranoid wife, the woman manufacturing problems, because she was insecure or unfulfilled or projecting something. He was very good at that kind of reversal. He had always been very good at making her doubt herself. "I'm fine," she said. "Never mind." He picked up his phone again. She cleared the plates. The 29th night she tried one more time. She knew she was going to try one more time, even as she told herself not to. She knew it the way you know you're about to say something you'll regret, fully aware, unable to stop. She turned to him in the dark. She touched his shoulder. She said his name softly. He moved away, not violently, not with anger, just with the automatic habitual withdrawal of someone who has already decided. "Amelia, please, not tonight." She lay still for a very long time. and in that stillness, something inside her stopped making excuses for him. The 30th night she didn't try. She lay beside him in the dark, and she thought about 9 years of marriage, about the woman she had been when she walked down that aisle, about the promises they had made in front of everyone they loved, about the way he had looked at her that day, like she was the most extraordinary thing he had ever seen. She thought about how slowly and quietly the distance had grown between them, like a crack in a wall that you ignore until one day the ceiling starts to come down. She thought about the 30 nights, 30 no's, 30 small rejections that had added up to something she could no longer call small. And she thought, tomorrow something is going to break. I can feel it. She was right. It was nearly 2 in the morning when his phone lit up. She wasn't asleep. She hadn't been asleep for most of 30 nights. She saw the screen brighten in her peripheral vision, and she felt the way his hand moved instinctively, the quick practiced reach, the immediate grab, the way he held it angled away even in the dark when he thought she was sleeping. She heard him exhale, a small quiet sound, not stress, not relief, something warmer and more private than either of those things. The sound a person makes when they receive something they've been waiting for. She didn't move. She kept her breathing slow and even. She kept her eyes just barely open, just enough to see his face in the blue-white glow of the screen. And she saw it. The thing she had been trying not to see for 30 nights, maybe for longer. She saw his face go soft in a way it hadn't gone soft with her in months. She saw him smile, that private smile, warm and real, and entirely not for her, before he turned the phone back over and settled into the dark. He was asleep in minutes. Amelia lay beside him and stared at the ceiling and felt the floor fall out from under everything she had believed about her life. She did not cry, not yet. The feeling was too large for crying. It was the kind of feeling that sits on your chest and prevents breath, that rewrites the recent past in real time, that makes you understand suddenly why every small thing felt wrong, why every instinct you dismissed was right, why every story you told yourself to make the distance seem survivable was a story you told because the truth was too heavy to carry alone in the dark. She lay there for a long time, and then very quietly she got up. She went to the bathroom. She closed the door. She turned on the light. She stood in front of the mirror for a while, just stood there looking at herself. The woman looking back at her was tired in a specific way, not the tiredness of not enough sleep, but the tiredness of carrying something alone for too long, of explaining away pain, of asking for less and less, until the person you were becoming had forgotten what it felt like to ask for anything at all. She recognized that woman. She had seen her before. She had watched her sister become her after a terrible marriage. She had watched her mother become her. She had promised herself years ago in a private and ferocious way that she had forgotten until this moment that she would never become that woman. But here she was, 30 nights, 30 no's, and a husband who was smiling at his phone at 2 in the morning while she lay beside him and quietly disappeared. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, and she made a decision. Not a dramatic decision, not a shouted declaration, not something that would make a good scene in a movie. A quiet decision. The kind of decision that lives in the body before the mind fully articulates it. The kind of decision that once made rearranges everything around it. She was done begging. She was done explaining. She was done making herself smaller and quieter and less in order to preserve a peace that was never real. She went back to the bedroom. She looked at Robert sleeping that comfortable, untroubled sleep of a man with no idea what was about to happen to his life. She pulled the covers up on her side of the bed. She lay down. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep. She planned. In the morning, Robert woke up at 6:30 the way he always did. He showered. He dressed. He came into the kitchen where Amelia was already up, already standing at the counter with coffee, already wearing her professional face. The face that revealed nothing, the face that managed everything. He kissed her on the cheek. It was the kiss of habit, the kiss of a man going through the choreography of a morning he had performed 1,000 times without thinking about any of the steps. "You're up early," he said, reaching past her for the coffee. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "You've been sleeping badly lately." He poured his cup. He checked his phone. His expression shifted for just a second, that same small brightening gone before most people would have caught it. But Amelia caught it. She had been watching for it for weeks now without knowing exactly what she was watching for. Now she knew. "I'm fine," she said. "I've got meetings all day," he said. "Late night probably. Don't wait up." She looked at him. She looked at his face, handsome in the way it had always been handsome, familiar in the way that 9 years of sleeping beside someone makes a face familiar, as recognizable as your own. She looked at him and she thought, "You don't know what I know, and you have no idea who you're dealing with." "Okay," she said. "Have a good day, Robert." He kissed her cheek again. He picked up his briefcase. He walked out the door. She listened to his car start. She listened to him pull out of the driveway. She listened until she couldn't hear the engine anymore, and then she picked up her phone and called her sister. "Gracie," she said when her sister answered, her voice still perfectly level, perfectly controlled. "I need you to come over." "Amelia, it's 7 in the morning. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said, and for a second she almost believed it, because wrong was the wrong word for what this was. This wasn't wrong. This was clarifying. This was the moment the fog burned off and you finally saw exactly what the terrain looked like. "I just need to talk," she said. "Can you come?" "I'm on my way," Gracie said without another question, because sisters who love you don't ask for reasons when your voice sounds like that. Amelia set the phone down. She picked up her coffee. She stood at the window and looked out at the empty driveway and thought about 30 nights and what came after them. She thought about the phone and what might be on it. She thought about a woman whose name she didn't know yet, but whose existence had just rewritten 8 months of her life. She thought about all the times she had blamed herself, all the quiet, corrosive self-questioning. Was she not attractive enough? Was she too much? Was she not interesting enough? Was she boring? Had she let herself go somehow, let the marriage go, let the spark go, let something essential slip away without noticing? She thought about all the energy she had poured into answering those questions. The dinners, the effort, the dresses, the patience, the endless, exhausting patience of a woman who was being systematically lied to and had decided the lie was her fault. She felt something shift in her chest. Not grief exactly, not anger exactly. Something older and harder and cleaner than both. Something that felt like the end of one story and the very first breath of another. She didn't know yet how hard the road ahead was going to be. She didn't know about the court dates, the late nights, the moments when she would lie on Gracie's couch and think about who she was before Robert, trying to remember a self that seemed to belong to someone else. She didn't know any of that yet, but she knew one thing. The woman who had begged for 30 nights was gone. And the woman standing at that window, watching the empty driveway, holding her coffee in both hands and feeling something like the beginning of her own life, that woman was just getting started. When Gracie arrived 20 minutes later, she took one look at her sister and said nothing. She just opened her arms, and Amelia walked into them and held on, and finally, for the first time in 30 nights, she let herself breathe. They sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Gracie with her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, watching Amelia with the careful, steady attention of someone who already knows the story and is waiting for the person telling it to find the words. "I think he's having an affair," Amelia said finally. Just like that. No preamble, no build-up, no dramatic revelation. Just the words sitting there on the table between them, like something that had always been there and had finally been named. Gracie didn't look surprised. Amelia noticed that. Gracie's expression was not surprise. It was sorrow, a different thing, a harder thing. The expression of someone who has been watching something coming and praying they were wrong. "Tell me," Gracie said. So Amelia told her. The 30 nights, the phone, the smile in the dark at 2 in the morning, the way his attention had shifted, the way his presence had hollowed out while his body was still in the room. The business calls in the hallway, the turned screen, the late nights, the careful explanations that always had just enough detail to be believable and never quite enough warmth to be real. Gracie listened to all of it. She didn't interrupt. She didn't reach for Amelia's hand. She sat very still, and she listened, and when Amelia was done, she asked one question. "What do you need?" Not "what are you going to do?" Not "are you sure?" Not "have you tried talking to him?" Just "what do you need?" Amelia thought about that question for a moment. She turned it over. She felt the weight of it and the gift of it, to be asked what she needed rather than told what to do, to be trusted with her own situation, to be seen as the person who got to decide what happened next in her own life. "I need to know the truth," she said. "All of it. Before I do anything, before I say anything to him, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." Gracie nodded. "Then that's where we start." "I need a lawyer," Amelia said. "Yes. And I need to be careful. Robert is smart, And he is going to manage this situation if he senses it coming. He will manage me right out of my own life if I let him get in front of it." "I know," Gracie said quietly, "so I'm not going to let him get in front of it." Gracie looked at her sister for a long moment, and then she said something that Amelia would remember for years afterward, would carry with her through every hard day and every moment of doubt. "There she is," Gracie said softly. "There's my sister." Amelia looked at her. She felt something complicated move through her grief and love, and the particular ache of someone who realizes they had stopped being themselves and is only now finding their way back. "I forgot her for a while," she said. "I know," Gracie said, "but she never left." Outside, a car passed on the street. The coffee cooled, the morning light came through the kitchen windows and fell across the table between them, and Amelia Carter sat in it and began very quietly to plan the rest of her life. She didn't know everything yet. She didn't know the woman's name. She didn't know how deep it went, how long it had been building, how many lies she had been living beside without knowing it. She didn't know any of the details that she was about to spend 2 weeks uncovering with a patience and a precision that would surprise even herself. But she knew this for 30 nights she had reached for a man who had already left. For 30 nights she had asked herself what was wrong with her. For 30 nights she had made herself smaller, quieter, more careful, more patient, as if the problem was her size, her volume, her hunger for a love she deserved. Tonight, that stopped. Tonight, for the first time in 30 nights, she was going to sleep. And in the morning, the real work was going to begin. She reached across the table and took Gracie's hand. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You don't have to thank me," Gracie said. "That's what I'm here for." Amelia nodded. She looked down at their joined hands. She thought about 9 years and 30 nights and a smile in the dark meant for someone else. She thought about the woman in the mirror and the decision that had no words yet but was already rewriting everything. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly, because Gracie was the only person in the world she could say that to. "I know," Gracie said, "but I'm more scared of what happens if I stay silent," Amelia said. Gracie squeezed her hand. "Then you already know what to do." And she did. She did. The morning after the 30th night, Amelia woke up before the alarm. She lay still for exactly 3 minutes, listening to Robert breathe beside her, and she made a list in her head. Not a list of grievances, not a list of questions, a list of what she needed to do before he opened his eyes. She needed to be calm. She needed to be normal. She needed to give him absolutely no indication that anything had shifted inside her, because the moment Robert sensed a shift, he would start managing the situation. And she had spent 9 years watching him manage situations. She knew exactly how good he was at it. She got up quietly. She went to the kitchen. She made coffee. She stood at the counter and drank it slowly and thought about what she had seen at 2 in the morning. That smile, that private, warm, completely unguarded smile that his face hadn't made in her direction in longer than she could remember, and she let herself feel the full weight of it for exactly 5 minutes. Then she put it away. She folded it up and stored it somewhere deep and cold and practical because grief was a luxury she couldn't afford yet. Not today. Today she needed to think. Robert came downstairs at 6:45. He was dressed for a meeting, the good suit, the silver tie she had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. He looked put together and confident and completely at ease, which told her everything she needed to know about how well he had slept. "Morning," he said, reaching past her for the coffee. "Morning," she said. He checked his phone. Right away, before he even poured his cup, before he said another word. His thumb moved across the screen, and his expression did the thing again, that small, involuntary softening gone in half a second, replaced immediately by his regular face, his husband face, the face he wore in her presence like a costume he had stopped thinking about. "You sleep okay?" he asked, not looking up. "Fine," she said. "You were up early." "Couldn't settle." She kept her voice light, easy. She handed him the creamer from the fridge because she always handed him the creamer, and she was not going to stop doing anything she always did. Not yet. Not until she was ready. He took it. He looked at her. Just for a second, something moved behind his eyes, a flicker of something she couldn't quite read. Assessment, maybe. The same quiet calculation she had noticed at dinner 2 nights ago. "You seem different this morning," he said. Her heart lurched, but her face didn't move. "Different how?" "I don't know. Quieter." "I'm always quiet in the morning," she said. He considered that. Then he nodded satisfied and went back to his phone. I've got a full day. Late night, probably. The Hargrove deal is moving faster than expected. That's good, she said. You've been working hard on that one. Yeah. He drank his coffee. He typed something. He almost smiled, caught himself, made his face neutral again. Don't wait up. I won't, she said. He kissed her on the cheek. She felt the brief press of his lips against her skin and thought, how many times has he kissed her like this today already? How many times has he touched his phone and thought of her, the other woman, whoever she was, before he touched his wife? She thought all of that, and she smiled, and she said, Have a good day, Robert. He picked up his briefcase and walked out. The door closed behind him. She heard his car start. She heard him pull away. She counted to 30. Old habit. She had no idea when she had developed the habit of counting to 30 before she let herself react to something, but she suspected it had started sometime in the last year, sometime around when the distance between them had begun to feel less like a phase and more like a permanent condition. At 30, she picked up her phone and called the one person she had not yet called, the one person she needed to call before she called anyone else. Not Gracie this time. Gracie knew the emotional landscape. Gracie knew how to hold her when she fell apart. But for what Amelia needed today, she needed someone with a different kind of knowledge. She needed Diana Marsh. Diana Marsh was a family law attorney. She was also, by some stroke of either luck or fate, a woman Amelia had met at a charity event 3 years ago and had quietly kept in her contacts ever since, for no reason she could have articulated at the time. Sometimes you kept a person's number the way you kept a flashlight in a drawer. You hoped you never needed it, but some instinct insisted you hold on to it anyway. She dialed. Diana answered on the second ring. Amelia Carter, it's been a while. It has, Amelia said. I need to talk to you, not as a friend, professionally. A pause. Brief, careful, professional. Tell me when and where. Today if you can. Whenever you have time, I'll come to you. I have a cancellation at 11, Diana said. Can you make that? I'll be there. She hung up. She stood in the kitchen for a moment, her phone in her hand, and she thought, this is real now. This is not a feeling or a suspicion or a fear she was managing in the dark. This was a phone call to a lawyer. This was a step. This was the beginning of something that could not be unbegun. She thought about turning back. She gave herself exactly 10 seconds to consider it, to imagine calling Diana back, saying never mind, going about her day, coming home tonight, making dinner, being the wife she had been for 30 nights of silent, patient, slowly dying loyalty. 10 seconds. Then she put her phone in her pocket and went to get dressed. Diana's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, clean and serious, the kind of space that said, whatever you bring in here, we will handle it. Diana herself was 52, sharp-eyed, with the kind of calm that came not from detachment, but from having seen enough human pain to stop being surprised by it. She listened to Amelia for 20 minutes without writing a single note, just listened. When Amelia finished, she picked up her pen. You said you saw a message on his phone, but you didn't read it, Diana said. Is that right? I saw the notification. I saw his reaction. I didn't read the content. Do you have access to shared accounts, financial records, credit cards, anything in both your names? We have 2 joint accounts and one that's his business account that I'm a signatory on. Diana wrote something down. I want you to do nothing with those accounts right now. Don't move money. Don't close anything. Don't signal anything. What I want you to do is start paying attention. Do you have access to statements? Online, yes. Good. I want you to look back 3 months. Hotels, restaurants. Purchases that don't fit a pattern you recognize. Don't print anything, don't screenshot anything yet. Just look. Do you understand why I'm saying yet? Because if he realizes I'm looking, he'll cover his tracks. Diana nodded. He's a developer. He's used to managing deals and managing people. He will manage this if he sees it coming, so you cannot let him see it coming. Amelia nodded. Everything Diana was saying mapped exactly onto what she already knew about Robert. He was not a man who panicked. He was a man who pivoted. The moment he sensed danger, he would start building a new narrative, and he was good enough at it to make her doubt her own memory. What else? Amelia asked. Keep everything normal at home. Same routines, same behavior. Give him no reason to change anything he's doing, because right now he's operating without caution. That's when people make mistakes. That's when you find what you need to find. How long? Amelia asked. As long as it takes, Diana said. Some women come in here with everything they need in a week. Some take 2 months. It depends on how careful he is and how patient you can be. Amelia thought about 30 nights of patience. She almost laughed. I can be patient, she said. Diana looked at her steadily. Amelia, I've seen a lot of women in that chair. Some of them come in and they want to blow everything up right now because the pain is too big to carry. Those women sometimes walk away with less than they deserve because they moved before they were ready. The women who walk away with everything with what they are owed are the ones who wait until they have the full picture. I want the full picture, Amelia said. Then go home, Diana said, and be the wife he thinks he still has, for now. She went home. She made dinner. She set the table. When Robert came home at 9:30, she had already eaten, but she heated up a plate for him and sat across from him while he ate. And she asked about the Hargrove deal, and she listened to him talk about it, and she said the right things in the right places, and she watched him the whole time with new eyes. She watched his phone. She watched the angle of the screen. She watched the way he held it during dinner face down beside his plate, which was something he had started doing only in the last few months. Before that, he'd never thought about it. Before that, there was nothing on his phone that required concealment. She noticed the new habit now with the calm, collecting focus of a woman who had been handed a purpose. I went to bed at 11. She stayed up. She went to the kitchen table with her laptop and she opened the joint account statements, and she started at 3 months ago, the way Diana had told her to, and she began to read. The first thing she found was a hotel charge. 3 months ago, a Thursday night. The Meridian, a boutique hotel, 40 minutes from their house, a place Amelia had actually suggested for their anniversary dinner last year because she had heard it was beautiful. Robert had said it was too expensive and they had gone somewhere else. $280. One night. Charged to the joint visa on a Thursday when Robert had told her he was at a conference in Columbus. She sat very still. She wrote down the date and the amount on a small notepad she had put in her bag for exactly this purpose. She kept reading. There was another charge 2 weeks later. A restaurant she didn't recognize, $64 on a Tuesday afternoon when Robert was supposed to be at a site inspection. She wrote that down too. Then she found a flower delivery, $112, to an address that was not their house, not his office, not anywhere she recognized. Her hand was completely steady as she wrote it down. She noticed that about herself, the steadiness. She had expected to fall apart somewhere in this process, to hit a number or a date and feel the floor give way. But it didn't. Every number she found made her calmer, not less. Every piece of evidence settled into place like a brick in a wall she was building around herself, something solid and structural, something nobody could take from her. She sat at that table until 1 in the morning. By the time she closed the laptop, she had written 7 entries in her notepad. 7 charges she could not account for. 7 moments in the last 3 months when Robert had been somewhere other than where he said he was with someone other than who he said he was with. 7. And that was just what showed up on one card. She put the notepad in her work bag under a folder behind her agenda. She closed the laptop. She went upstairs. Robert was asleep, his breathing slow and regular, his face relaxed in the way faces go, relaxed in sleep, guileless, almost innocent. She stood in the doorway for a moment and looked at him. She thought, you have no idea. She got into bed. She lay in the dark. She did not reach for him. For the first time in 30 nights, the decision not to reach for him was entirely hers. The next 10 days moved with a strange doubled quality on the surface normal, underneath everything changing. Amelia went to work, came home, made dinner, asked about the Hargrove deal, said goodnight. She was present in every way that could be observed and absent in every way that mattered. Robert didn't notice. That was the first real revelation of those 10 days, not what she was finding about him, but what his behavior revealed about how much attention he had stopped paying to her. She could have been a different woman entirely, living a completely separate interior life, and he would not have noticed because he was no longer looking. I was busy. He was always busy now. Late nights, early mornings, a constant low hum of phone activity that he managed with practiced ease. She watched him do it, and she wondered how long it had taken him to get this comfortable. How many weeks had he spent being careful before he stopped needing to be? How quickly had he decided she wasn't watching? On day 4, she asked Gracie to help her with something she couldn't do alone. I need someone to watch the Meridian, she said. They were sitting in Gracie's car parked outside a coffee shop because Amelia had stopped having conversations she cared about inside her own house. She didn't know if Robert had done anything to the house. She had no reason to think so. She wasn't living in a movie, but she was no longer willing to take chances with space she couldn't control. Gracie turned to look at her. "Watch it how?" "Robert charged a hotel room there 3 months ago, on a night he said he was in Columbus. I want to know if he goes back." Gracie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Amelia, are you asking me to surveil my brother-in-law?" "Yes," Amelia said simply. Another silence. Gracie looked out the windshield. She had never been someone who performed her loyalty. She simply delivered it practically, and without fanfare, the way she had been doing since they were children. "What do I do if I see him there?" "You take a picture, that's all. You don't confront him, you don't say anything, you don't let him see you. You take a picture and you send it to me." "Okay," Gracie said. "Gracie." "I said okay," Gracie said firmly. "He's been lying to my sister for God knows how long. The least I can do is take a picture." Amelia felt something loosen in her chest, not grief. Gratitude, the specific, almost painful gratitude of someone who has been carrying something alone and has finally been offered a hand. 3 days later, Gracie sent her a photograph. Amelia was at her desk at work when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. The message was from Gracie, and it contained no words, just an image. She opened it. The photograph was taken from across the street, slightly blurry with distance, clearly taken quickly and without a steady hand. But it was clear enough. Robert was there in front of the Meridian in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday, when he had texted Amelia that morning to say he was stuck in back-to-back meetings all day and probably wouldn't be home for dinner. He was there, and he was not alone. The woman beside him was perhaps 30 years old. Dark hair, well-dressed, the kind of easy, natural attractiveness that didn't announce itself, but was simply there. She was laughing at something Robert had said, and Robert was looking at her with an expression Amelia recognized from memory, from the early years, from the version of him that existed before the distance had grown, and the phone had become a barrier, and the 30 nights had accumulated like debt. How was looking at her like she was extraordinary. Amelia sat at her desk and looked at that photograph for a long time. She had known. She had known since the night of the smile in the dark. But knowing and seeing were different things, and she sat with the weight of that difference for the count of a full minute before she did anything else. Then she forwarded the photograph to Diana Marsh. She typed, "Found it. Ready to move to the next step." Diana replied within minutes. "Come in tomorrow morning. Bring the notepad." Amelia put her phone face down on her desk. She looked at her computer screen. She had a presentation to finish for a client meeting on Thursday. She pulled up the file. She worked on it for the next 2 hours with her full attention because she was Amelia Carter, and she did not let things fall apart at work, not even when everything else was falling apart everywhere else. She was that precise. She was that determined. That evening, Robert came home at 7, which was earlier than she expected. He was in a good mood, relaxed in a way he hadn't been around her in weeks, the particular ease of a man who had recently gotten something he wanted. He brought wine. He suggested they order takeout instead of cooking. He sat beside her on the couch instead of at his usual distance. She let him. She smiled. She poured the wine. She laughed at the right moments. She was so good at it that there was a moment somewhere in the middle of the second glass where she caught herself and felt a cold wash of clarity. She was sitting beside a man who had been lying to her for 8 months, eating takeout and drinking wine like a normal couple, and she was doing it so flawlessly that she almost scared herself. But then Robert reached over and picked up his phone, and his expression shifted, and he angled the screen just slightly away from her, and she remembered. She remembered everything. "What time is your first meeting tomorrow?" she asked, her voice perfectly even. 8:30, he said. "Why, just wondering if I'd see you in the morning." She smiled at him over her glass. "Sometimes I feel like we're ships passing." He looked at her. Something moved through his expression. Almost guilt, she thought almost. Or maybe just the shadow of the person he used to be, the person who would have been guilty. "Yeah," he said. "I know. Things have been crazy. It'll settle down after the Hargrove deal closes." "I know," she said. "I'm not complaining. I know how hard you're working." He looked at her for a moment longer. Something uncertain in his eyes, something she couldn't quite read. Then he nodded and looked back at his phone. She sipped her wine. The next morning she sat across from Diana Marsh and put the notepad on the desk between them. Diana picked it up. She read through every entry. She looked at the photograph Amelia had forwarded. "Good," Diana said. "This is good. This is enough to proceed. But I want to be honest with you. This is the beginning, not the end. He'll contest. He'll have his own attorney. He'll argue the charges are business expenses. He may even argue you knew." "I didn't know," Amelia said. "I know you didn't," Diana said. "But that's what the process looks like from here. It will not be clean, it will not be fast, and it will not be painless." She paused. "I want you to understand that before you decide to proceed." Amelia looked at her. She thought about 30 nights. She thought about the photograph, Robert's face, the way he had looked at that woman, the expression she had been waiting to see directed at herself for longer than she could clearly remember now. "I understand," she said. "And you want to proceed?" "Yes," Amelia said, "but not yet." Diana tilted her head slightly. "Tell me." "I want the full picture," Amelia said. "You told me that. The women who get everything are the ones who wait until they have the full picture." She looked at Diana steadily. "I want to know everything. How long it's been, how deep it goes, what he has that I don't know about. Everything. Before he knows I know anything." Diana studied her for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Then we keep going," she said. "You stay the course." "I stay the course," Amelia said. She went home. She made dinner. Robert texted at 6 to say he'd be late. She ate alone and cleaned up and went through more statements at the kitchen table and added 3 more entries to the notepad. She was not the same woman who had lain in the dark 30 nights ago, reaching for a man who had already left. That woman had been full of questions about herself, her worth, her attractiveness, her adequacy as a wife and a person. That woman had been shrinking. This woman was expanding. This woman was taking up exactly as much space as she was owed. This woman was building something, not revenge, not a case for anger, but a foundation. Solid, careful hers. Gracie called that night while Amelia was still at the table. "How are you doing?" Gracie asked. "Actually doing. Not the version you tell everyone." Amelia considered the question seriously. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm better than okay, actually. That's what's strange. I thought I would be falling apart by now, and I'm not." "That's not strange," Gracie said. "That's what knowing the truth does. You were falling apart for 30 nights because you didn't know what was wrong. Now you know. Now you have something to do with it." Amelia was quiet for a moment. "She's young," she said. "The woman in the photograph. She looks about 30. "Amelia." "I'm not saying it to hurt myself. I'm just saying it. She's young and she was laughing and he looked at her the way he used to look at me." She paused. "I don't feel jealous. Isn't that strange? I thought I would feel jealous, and I just feel clear. Like the picture finally came into focus, and now I know what I'm looking at." "What are you looking at?" Gracie asked quietly. "A man who made a choice," Amelia said. "Every single day for 8 months, he woke up and made a choice, and the choice was not me." She let that sit for a moment. "So now I get to make my choice." Gracie didn't say anything for a few seconds. When she spoke, her voice was careful and steady, the way it got when she was trying very hard not to cry. "What's your choice?" "Myself," Amelia said. "I'm choosing myself." She said it quietly, simply, without performance, without anger, without the shaking edge of someone who is only half convinced. She said it the way you say something when you have already decided it all the way down, when it has already changed the way you move through a room, and the way you sleep at night, and the way you sit at a kitchen table at 10 o'clock, going through bank statements with a calm, deliberate hand. "Okay," Gracie said. "Then that's what we're going to make sure happens." After they hung up, Amelia sat for a while longer at the table. She thought about the woman she had been when this month started, the woman who had cried in a bathroom at midnight and asked the mirror what was wrong with her. She thought about how close she had come to believing the story Robert's absence was telling her, how close she had come to deciding the problem was hers to fix. She thought about what Gracie had said the morning after the 30th night. "There she is. There's my sister." She had not lost herself entirely. She had only misplaced herself for a while, handed herself over piece by piece in the name of a marriage that only one person was actually fighting for. She was taking herself back now, methodically, intentionally, one entry in a notepad, one conversation with a lawyer one morning at a time. Upstairs, Robert was asleep again. His breathing was slow and even and completely untroubled. He still had no idea. And Amelia Carter, sitting at the kitchen table in the house she had helped build, in the life she had helped construct with her notepad and her lawyer's number, and her sister on speed dial, and her own unmistakable returning sense of herself. Amelia Carter was just getting started. 2 weeks had passed since Amelia sat across from Diana Marsh and said the words out loud for the first time. 2 weeks of dinners she cooked and ate across from a man she no longer recognized. 2 weeks of saying, "How was your day?" and "Don't work too hard," and "Good night," with a steadiness that she suspected was the most demanding performance of her life. 2 weeks of a notepad that now had 19 entries, each one dated, each one precise, each one a small, irrefutable brick in the wall she was building. And she had not cracked once. Not when Robert came home on a Tuesday, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers, and said he'd been at a client dinner. Not when she opened the credit card statement and found a jewelry charge for $340 at a boutique she had never been taken to. Not when Gracie texted her a second photograph, Robert and the woman again, this time at a restaurant in broad daylight, his hand on the small of her back, in the easy proprietary way of a man who had stopped worrying about being seen. She had looked at that second photograph for a long time. She had felt the specific surgical pain of it, not the wild grief she had feared, but something colder and more permanent, like watching something die that had already been dying for a long time. Then she had forwarded it to Diana and written 3 more things in her notepad and gone to sleep. She was sleeping now. That was the thing she hadn't expected. For the first time in weeks, she was actually sleeping. It was a Thursday morning, day 15 of what she had privately started calling the after, when everything changed again. She had been at her desk at work for 2 hours when her phone rang. It was Gracie. Gracie never called during work hours unless something had happened. She picked up immediately. "What is it?" "He's there," Gracie said. Her voice was low and tight, the voice of someone trying to sound calm and not entirely succeeding. "Right now, the Meridian. I was driving past on the way to my appointment, and I saw his car in the parking structure. Amelia, her car is there too. I know her car because I looked it up after the first photograph. It's a white Audi. It's there." Amelia sat very still. Her hand was holding the phone, and her other hand was flat on the desk in front of her, and she was breathing slowly in and out, the way Diana had told her to breathe when moments like this arrived. "Are you sure?" she said. "His plates, her plates, both of them, right now." She looked at her computer screen. She looked at the presentation she had been working on her client's name in the header, the 11 o'clock meeting she had in 45 minutes. She thought about Diana's voice. The women who walk away with everything are the ones who wait until they have the full picture. Then she thought, I have the full picture. "Don't go anywhere," she said to Gracie. "I'm coming." She stood up. She went to her manager's office. She knocked on the door and said very calmly that she had a family emergency and needed to step out for the morning. Her manager took one look at her face and said, "Of course go. We've got the 11 o'clock. She picked up her bag. She walked to the elevator. She rode it down 14 floors with her hands folded in front of her and her eyes on the doors and her heartbeat surprisingly, almost frighteningly steady. She got in her car. She drove across town. She parked on the street half a block from the Meridian where Gracie was waiting, sitting low in the driver's seat of her own car, with the look of a woman who had very much not signed up for this kind of morning. Amelia got into Gracie's passenger seat. "His car is still there," Gracie said immediately. "I know." "Amelia, what are we doing here?" "I need to see it," Amelia said. "I need to see it myself, with my own eyes, not a photograph, not a bank statement. I need to actually see it." Gracie looked at her. There was something in her expression, not protest exactly, more like the look of someone who understands and wishes they didn't. "Okay," she said quietly. They waited. 22 minutes later. Amelia counted every one of them. Robert walked out of the hotel. He was in the suit she had seen him leave the house in that morning, slightly disheveled in a way he never was. After a business meeting, his tie loosened his jacket over one arm. He was on his phone already, which was so consistent with the person she had spent 2 weeks observing that she almost laughed. And then the woman came out behind him. Seeing her in person was different from the photographs. In person, she was real, not a blurry image forwarded between sisters in quiet anguish, not an anonymous figure in the background of someone else's betrayal, but a real woman with a name. Amelia didn't know yet, a woman in a gray dress with her dark hair slightly less perfect than it had probably been an hour ago, laughing at something Robert said as she caught up to him. Robert turned to look at her, and his face did what it always did when he looked at her. That softness, that warmth, that expression of a man who is exactly where he wants to be. Amelia watched it from half a block away, sitting in her sister's passenger seat, and she felt something inside her go completely, utterly quiet. Not numb, not broken, quiet. The way a room goes quiet after a sound has been playing so long you stopped hearing it, and then suddenly it stops, and you realize how much noise you had been living in. For 8 months, she had been living in the noise of a marriage that was already over, the noise of 30 nights of rejection she had tried to explain away, the noise of her own voice asking herself what was wrong with her, what she had done, what she needed to change or fix or be differently. The noise was gone now. In its place was something she recognized from a long time ago, from before Robert, from before the years of making herself smaller to keep the peace. It was the particular, almost electric clarity of a woman who knows exactly who she is and exactly what she is going to do. She took out her phone. She opened the camera. She took 3 photographs, Robert, the woman, the two of them together in front of the hotel, and her hands were completely steady the entire time. Then she put her phone in her bag. "Okay," she said. Gracie turned to look at her. "Okay, okay," Amelia said again. "I have what I need. Take me back to my car." Gracie stared at her for a moment. "That's it. You're not going to—" "I don't know. Confront him, say something." "No," Amelia said simply. "Not today. Amelia, he's right there." "I know where he is," she said. "I know exactly where he is. That's the whole point." She looked at Gracie steadily. "If I confront him today, he has time to react. He has time to call his attorney before I've even called mine. He has time to move money change narratives, prepare a version of events that works in his favor. I am not handing him that time." Gracie sat back. She let out a long breath. "You've thought about this." "I've thought about everything," Amelia said. Gracie started the car. That evening, Amelia came home before Robert. She made dinner the pasta he liked, the good Parmesan, the garlic bread she always made too much of because he liked having it the next day. She set the table. She poured herself a glass of wine. She sat at the table with her phone, and she looked at the 3 photographs she had taken that morning for a long time. Then she called Diana. "I saw them," she said when Diana picked up. "In person, both of them, leaving the hotel together." Diana was quiet for exactly 1 second. And I have 3 new photographs, taken this morning. His face is clear in all of them." "Send them to me now," Diana said. "And Amelia, are you ready? Because what I'm about to say means we are moving from preparation to execution." "Tell me," Amelia said. "The papers can be ready in 48 hours, Diana said. "I've been building this filing since your second appointment. I have the financial documentation, the photographs from your sister, your records, and now this. We have more than enough. We have significantly more than enough. The question is, when you want him served." Amelia looked at the photographs on her phone, Robert's face, the softness in it, the ease of a man who had no idea the woman he thought he still had was sitting in a kitchen making his favorite dinner with a divorce attorney on the line. "Friday," she said. "Serve him Friday." "I'll have a process server ready," Diana said. "At his office." "Yes," Amelia said. "At his office. At 2 in the afternoon when he's likely to have people around him and no clean way to react." She paused. "I know how he manages situations. I want him in a situation he cannot manage." Diana's voice had something in it that might in a different context have been called admiration. "Friday at 2, she said. "It's done." Robert came home at 7:15. He was in the good mood again, the loose, relaxed mood she had come to recognize as the mood of a man who had spent the day getting exactly what he wanted. He complimented the dinner. He poured himself wine. He sat across from her and actually talked, really talked the way he used to talk in the early years, about the Hargrove deal, about a contractor who had finally stopped being difficult, about something funny that had happened in a meeting that morning. She listened. She laughed in the right places. She asked follow-up questions. She was so present, so warm, so entirely the wife he expected her to be, that halfway through dinner, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "I know things have been hard lately," he said. "I know I've been distracted. Once this deal closes, I want us to take a trip, just the 2 of us, somewhere we've never been." She looked at his hand over hers. She looked at his face, open, genuine, offering her something. She understood that some part of him meant it. That was the thing about Robert that she had spent 9 years not quite being able to reconcile. He could be this, the man across the table, present and warm and offering vacations, and he could also be the man in the photographs. Both things were real. Both things were him. And she had spent far too long trying to hold only one of them as true. "That sounds nice," she said. He squeezed her hand. He smiled at her. He looked for just a moment like the man she had married. She smiled back. After dinner, after the dishes, after he settled on the couch with the television and the phone and the comfortable distance that was his natural habitat, she went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel all of it, the full weight of everything she had been carrying and managing and compartmentalizing for the past 15 days. She felt the grief of 9 years ending. She felt the grief of a man who could look at her across a dinner table like that while carrying what he was carrying. She felt the grief of the 30 nights and what they had cost her, not just sleep, not just dignity, but the slow, steady erosion of the version of herself that knew she deserved better. She sat with all of it for 10 minutes. She gave herself exactly 10 minutes. Then she washed her face. She put her notepad in her work bag. She set her alarm for 6:15. She got into bed and closed her eyes. Friday was coming. Friday arrived like any other day on the surface. Robert up at 6:30, dressed coffee, the kiss on the cheek, that was both habit and costume, his briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other as he walked out to his car. "Have a good day," she said from the kitchen doorway. "You too." He was already looking at his phone. "Late night probably." "I know," she said. "It's fine." He got in his car. He drove away. She stood in the doorway until she couldn't see him anymore. Then she went inside. She sat down at the kitchen table. She looked at her phone. It was 7:03 in the morning, 7 hours and 57 minutes until 2 o'clock. She went to work. She answered emails. She sat in 2 meetings and contributed meaningfully to both of them. She ate lunch at her desk. She checked her phone once at noon, nothing yet, but nothing was expected until 2. At 1:55, she put her phone face up on her desk. At 2:01, it rang. It was Diana. "It's done," Diana said. "He was served at his office at 2 o'clock. He has been formally notified." Amelia closed her eyes, just for a second. Just 1 second where she let herself feel the magnitude of what had just happened. The door that had just closed, and the door that had just opened, and the overwhelming, terrifying, necessary reality of both. "How did he react?" she asked. The server said he read the first page, put it down, picked it up again, and then asked to be given a moment. He was very controlled about it. Diana paused. "He called me directly 14 minutes later." "He called you?" "He called my office. My assistant took the message. He wants to talk. He's saying this is a misunderstanding and he'd like to resolve it before it goes any further." Amelia let out a breath that was almost a laugh. A misunderstanding. 8 months, 19 entries in a notepad, 2 hotel visits documented, 1 jewelry purchase, 3 photographs taken from a car window on a Thursday morning. A misunderstanding. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "That all communication goes through counsel," Diana said. "That's standard. And Amelia, he's going to come home tonight, and he is going to try to talk to you directly. He is going to be very calm and very persuasive, and he is going to say things that are designed to make you doubt your decision. I need you to be prepared for that." "I'm prepared," Amelia said. "I need you to say as little as possible. I need you to let him talk and give him nothing to work with. Can you do that?" "Diana," she said, "I spent 2 weeks sitting across from this man at dinner every night and giving him nothing to work with. I think I can manage 1 more conversation." There was a pause. "Yes," Diana said, and there was that note in her voice again, that quiet, measured thing that was almost admiration. "I think you can." She drove home. She changed out of her work clothes. She made tea instead of dinner because she wasn't hungry, because her stomach was doing something complicated that she recognized as the physical manifestation of everything she had been suppressing for 15 days. She sat on the couch with her tea, and she waited. He was home by 4:30. She heard the car. She heard the door. She heard the particular quality of his footsteps, fast, purposeful, none of his usual evening ease. He came into the living room and stopped when he saw her. He was holding the papers. He had them in his hands, slightly crumpled at the top from where he had gripped them. His face was doing something she had never quite seen it do before, Controlled, yes, always controlled. But underneath the control, there was something raw, something almost panicked, the expression of a man who had run a calculation and gotten a result he wasn't prepared for. "Amelia," he said. "Robert," she said. He sat down across from her. He put the papers on the coffee table between them. He looked at her, and she could see him deciding how to begin running through options, the way he ran through options in a difficult deal, which approach, which angle, which version of himself was most likely to produce the outcome he wanted. "This is not what I want," he said finally. "I know," she said. "This is not what either of us wants." "You don't know what I want," she said quietly, not with anger, simply as a statement of fact. He stopped. He looked at her differently. She saw it the moment he registered that she was not the woman he had been sitting across from at dinner for the past 2 weeks. Or rather, she was, but he was only now understanding what that woman had actually been doing during all those dinners. The recalculation happened in real time on his face, and she watched it happen and felt nothing except a kind of distant, almost clinical clarity. "How long have you known?" he said. She looked at him. She thought about 30 nights. She thought about the smile in the dark at 2 in the morning. She thought about a photograph taken from a car window and 19 entries in a notepad and a jewelry charge for a boutique she had never been taken to. "Long enough," she said. He put his hands on his knees. He leaned forward. He was going to try the direct approach. She could see it, the shift in his posture, the settling into a kind of vulnerable honesty that Robert deployed strategically when other strategies had failed. "It was a mistake," he said. "I made a terrible mistake, and I know that. I know what I've done, and I'm not going to sit here and try to minimize it. I need you to know that I love you, that I have never stopped loving you." She let him finish. She sat with the words for a moment, gave them their due weight because they deserved at least that to be heard seriously before they were answered seriously. "Robert," she said, "you made a choice. You made it every day for 8 months. You made it on Thursday afternoons in a hotel 40 minutes from our house. You made it every time you turned your phone away from me. You made it every time I reached for you, and you pushed me away because you were saving yourself for someone else." She paused. "That's not a mistake. A mistake is something that happens once. What you did was a decision, a sustained, deliberate daily decision." He looked at her. She saw it again, that rawness under the control, that flash of something that might have been genuine. "I can fix this," he said. "I can fix this if you let me. Therapy. Whatever you need. I will do whatever you need, Amelia, because you are my wife, and I do not want to lose you." She looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the woman in the gray dress laughing as she caught up to him on a Thursday morning. She thought about the way his face had looked in that moment, the ease, the warmth, the complete and unself-conscious happiness of a man exactly where he wanted to be. She thought about whether she would ever be able to give him that look again and mean it. "You didn't choose me," she said. "When I was standing right beside you every single day, you chose someone else, and I'm not angry about it. I'm not asking you to explain it. I don't need to understand your reasons." She held his gaze steady and clear. "I just need you to understand mine. Amelia, I'm choosing myself, Robert," she said. "For the first time in a very long time, I'm choosing myself, and that means I'm done." The room was completely quiet. He sat back. The papers sat between them. And Robert Brooks, who had managed every difficult situation of his adult life, with calculation and control, and the kind of persuasive managed calm that made people trust him, even when they shouldn't. Robert sat there, and for the first time in 9 years of marriage, he had nothing to say. She stood up. She picked up her tea. "I'd like you to stay somewhere else tonight," she said. "My attorney will be in touch with yours. I think you already have her number." She walked out of this room. She went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the bed and she listened to the sounds of him moving through the house, below the low sound of him on the phone, his voice careful and controlled, probably calling his own attorney already, because Robert did not stay still in a crisis. Robert always made the next move. She heard him in the guest room. She heard drawers. She heard him come upstairs and go back down. She heard after about 40 minutes the sound of the front door, his car starting, him pulling out of the driveway. The house went quiet. She sat with the quiet for a long time. It was the loudest quiet she had ever heard, full of 9 years of a life ending of 30 nights that had led here, of all the mornings and dinners and conversations and silences that had built this house of a marriage and were now settling like dust in an empty room. She had known this moment was coming. She had built toward it deliberately, brick by brick, with a notepad and a lawyer and her sister in a parked car on a Thursday morning. She had known it was coming, and she had thought she was prepared for it. She was not prepared for how much it hurt. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she let herself feel it, all of it, without compartmentalizing, without the practical distance she had maintained for 15 days, without Diana's voice in her head, reminding her to stay strategic. She felt it the way you feel something real with your whole body with no protection. She cried, finally. Not the desperate, helpless crying of the woman who had lain awake for 30 nights wondering what was wrong with her. Something different, something older. The crying of someone who has done the hard thing and now has to live on the other side of it. She cried for about 20 minutes, then she stopped. She washed her face. She blew her nose. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for a while. This woman, this tired and clear-eyed and quietly determined woman, and she felt underneath the grief, something she had not felt in so long, she had almost forgotten its name. She felt like herself. Her phone was on the nightstand. She picked it up. She called Gracie. "It's done," she said when Gracie answered. There was a sharp intake of breath. "Amelia, are you okay?" "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "I think so. I will be. Do you want me to come over?" She thought about it. She thought about what she wanted, what she actually wanted, and realized with a small, startled recognition that she hadn't asked herself that question in a very long time. "What do you want, Amelia? What do you actually want?" "Not tonight," she said. "I think I want to be here by myself tonight. In my house. Just me." Gracie was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm calling you in the morning." "I know," Amelia said. "I'll answer." She hung up. She turned off the bedroom light. She lay down in the middle of the bed, the full, whole, unshared middle of it, and she looked at the dark ceiling and she breathed. For 30 nights she had lain in this bed beside a man who had already left and felt herself becoming less with each rejection. Tonight she lay alone and felt herself becoming more, larger, more solid, more entirely, specifically, undeniably herself. Robert had made his choice every day for 8 months. Tonight she had made hers, and for the first time in longer than she could clearly remember, the choice she had made was not about him at all. The morning after Robert left, Amelia woke up at 6:15 and lay still for a moment, taking inventory of herself, the way you take inventory after something has broken, carefully, honestly checking each part to see what remained. She was still here. That was the first thing. She was still here, and the house was quiet, and the bed was hers, and the day ahead was hers, and she was against all the odds of the past 30 nights, and the past 8 months, and the past 2 weeks of the most demanding performance of her life, still entirely herself. She got up. She made coffee. She stood at the kitchen window and drank it, and watched the morning come in and thought about almost nothing. Just the coffee. Just the light. Just the specific, remarkable feeling of standing in her own kitchen, in her own life, with no performance required of her, no management, no careful calibration of what she revealed and what she concealed. Just herself. Just the morning. Gracie called at 7:30 as promised. "Tell me," she said when Amelia picked up. "I slept," Amelia said. "Actually slept. First time in I don't know how long." Gracie let out a breath that sounded like it had been held since the night before. "Okay, good, that's good." A pause. "And this morning?" "Strange," Amelia said honestly. "Strange in a way I don't have a word for yet. Not bad, just large, like everything got larger overnight." "That's what real air feels like," Gracie said. "You've been breathing in a sealed room for a long time." Amelia thought about that. She thought about 30 nights and 19 entries in a notepad, and a man who had filled every room he was in with his own needs until she had forgotten she had any. "Yeah," she said, "maybe." "I'm coming over this weekend," Gracie said. It was not a question. "I know," Amelia said. "I'll make the good coffee." She hung up. She finished her coffee. She showered, dressed, and went to work because going to work was what she did, and because the alternative was sitting in the house with the largeness of everything, and she was not ready for that yet. She needed the ordinary rhythms of the day, the meetings and the deadlines and the specific, manageable demands of a professional life she had built entirely on her own terms. She was at her desk by 8:30. By 9, she had answered 16 emails. By 10, she was in a meeting, and she was fully present in it, not performing presence the way she had been performing everything for the past 2 weeks, but they're actually engaged, because this was her work, and she was good at it, and nothing Robert had done could touch that. At 11:15, her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. It said, "Amelia, this is Lauren. I think we need to talk." She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she put the phone face down on the desk. She knew who Lauren was. She didn't need the name to tell her. She had a photograph of Lauren in a gray dress laughing on a Thursday morning outside the Meridian. She had been Lauren without knowing her name for 15 days. She turned the phone back over. She looked at the message again. Then she typed, "I don't think we do. Take care of yourself, Lauren." She blocked the number. She put the phone in her bag. She went back to her meeting. That was the first day. The days that followed moved differently than she expected. She had anticipated chaos, the legal back and forth she knew was coming, the emotional ambushes, the moments she hadn't prepared for. What she hadn't anticipated was the way her own life began expanding into the space Robert had vacated, like a plant growing toward light that had suddenly been uncovered. She started noticing things, small things at first. She woke up and the bathroom counter had room on it. She came home and the television was off. She made dinner and she made exactly what she wanted. Not the pasta he liked, not the braised short ribs that took 4 hours, not any of the meals she had constructed around his preferences, just what she wanted, which turned out to be a lot of soups and good bread and things she ate standing at the counter because she could. She started reading again. She had stopped reading, really reading, absorbed reading, the kind where you lose an hour without noticing sometime in the last 2 years. She hadn't registered the loss until the evening she picked up a novel she had bought and never opened and read 40 pages before she looked up and realized it was 10 o'clock. She called her mother for the first time in 3 months. Her mother, Carol, was 71 and lived in Asheville and had a way of saying things that was either deeply wise or deeply irritating, depending on Amelia's state of mind. She had liked Robert initially. She had stopped liking him somewhere around year 6 of the marriage, though she had never said so directly because Carol Carter didn't say things like that directly. She said them sideways in small observations that only became clear in retrospect. "Mom," Amelia said when her mother picked up, "I have something to tell you." "I know," Carol said. Amelia stopped. "What do you mean you know?" "Gracie called me," Carol said simply. Amelia sat down on the couch. "Of course she did. Don't be angry at her. She was worried about you, and I'm your mother, and she was right to call me." A pause. "How are you, baby?" The word baby spoken in her mother's voice hit her somewhere she hadn't expected. She felt her eyes sting. She pressed her hand against her mouth for a second. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm actually okay, which is strange." "It's not strange," Carol said. "You've been grieving this marriage for a long time. You just weren't allowed to call it that." Amelia was quiet. She thought about 30 nights. She thought about all the ways she had been losing this marriage slowly, invisibly in the dark, while telling herself it was a phase, a rough patch, something that would correct itself if she was patient enough. "He had an affair," she said. 8 months. There's someone else." "I know," Carol said again, and then more quietly, "I suspected. Not that specifically, but I could see something in you when I visited last Christmas. Something that wasn't right. I should have asked." "I wouldn't have told you," Amelia said honestly. "I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet." "Are you ready now?" "Yes," she said, and she was surprised even now by how completely she meant it. "Yes, I'm ready for all of it." "Then that's what matters," Carol said. "The rest is just paperwork." Amelia laughed. Actually laughed a real sound, unperformed, slightly startled out of her. "Diana would disagree with you." "Diana is your lawyer. Her job is to make it complicated. My job is to remind you it isn't." Carol paused. "He doesn't deserve your suffering, Amelia. He had a beautiful, capable, loyal woman, and he threw her away. That's his failure, not yours. And I need you to know that even if there are going to be days when you forget it." Amelia pressed her hand to her eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "Come to Asheville when this is over," Carol said, "or before it's over. Come whenever you need to. My door is open." "I will," Amelia said. "I promise." She hung up and sat for a moment with the feeling of being loved in that specific way, not romantically, not conditionally, but with the steady, unearned certainty of family love, the kind that doesn't require you to perform or manage or be anything other than exactly what you are. She had forgotten how much she needed it. She had been so focused on her marriage, on managing and preserving and protecting it, that she had let the other loves in her life grow quiet. She was done letting things grow quiet. 3 weeks into the process, Robert's attorney made their first formal offer. Diana called her on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was measured, which Amelia had learned meant she was about to say something that required a measured response. His side is proposing a settlement, Diana said. It's a starting position, not a final offer. I want to walk you through it. Tell me. He's proposing a 50-50 split of shared assets. He's contesting the valuation of the Brooks Development portfolio on the grounds that it predates the marriage. Amelia was quiet for a moment. He's trying to protect the company. He's trying to protect the company, Diana confirmed, which is his right. But here's the problem for him. We have documentation showing that during the marriage, specifically during years 4 through 9, your income contributed materially to household expenses that directly subsidized his ability to invest in the business. We can make a compelling argument for marital contribution to asset growth. Do it, Amelia said. It will cost him, Diana said. His attorney will come back harder. I know, Amelia said. Let them. Diana was quiet for a second. There's something else. Tell me. He's asking for a mediated conversation, not a legal negotiation, a personal conversation. Just the two of you, no attorneys. His side is framing it as an attempt at amicable resolution. Amelia let that sit. She thought about Robert across the coffee table with the divorce papers between them, the carefully calibrated vulnerability, the measured persuasive honesty deployed in service of a specific outcome. She thought about how good he was at that, how many times it had worked on her, how many times she had walked out of a difficult conversation with him, feeling like she was the one who had been unreasonable. No, she said. I think that's the right call, Diana said. I wanted to give you the option. He doesn't want resolution, Amelia said. He wants an opening. He wants me in a room without you where he can work on me directly. Tell his attorney the answer is no, and all communication goes through counsel. Done, Diana said. I'll have a counterproposal on the asset valuation ready by Thursday. Amelia hung up. She sat with the knowledge that Robert had tried this move, the direct appeal, the request to set aside the structure and talk to her personally, and she felt nothing except a quiet, clear-eyed recognition. She had loved this man for 9 years. She had believed in him completely. And she knew him, which meant she knew that this request had nothing to do with resolution and everything to do with strategy. She opened her laptop. She had a pitch to finish for a new client. She finished it. 4 weeks in, Robert showed up at the house. He didn't call ahead. Of course he didn't. Robert didn't telegraph moves that he needed to land by surprise. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Amelia was in the kitchen with Gracie, and the doorbell rang, and Gracie looked at the security camera on her phone and said, "It's him," in a voice that was entirely flat. Amelia put down her coffee mug. She smoothed her shirt. She went to the door. She opened it. Robert looked like a man who had not been sleeping well. That was the first thing she noticed, the specific, unmistakable look of disrupted sleep, the slightly hollow quality around his eyes, the tension in his jaw that he was managing but not entirely concealing. He was dressed casually, which was unusual for him on a day he intended to be seen. He looked, she thought, deliberately less polished than usual, which meant he had thought about how to look when he came here. That calculation visible in his carefully casual clothing told her everything she needed to know about this visit. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Robert, you know you're supposed to go through Diana." "I know," he said. "I'm not here about the divorce. I need to talk to you. 5 minutes, please." She looked at him. She thought about Diana's voice let him talk and give him nothing to work with. She stepped back and let him in. He came into the hallway. He saw Gracie in the kitchen doorway, and something moved across his face, discomfort, recalculation, the brief frustration of a man who had planned a scene and found the staging was wrong. "Gracie," he said. "Robert," Gracie said. Her voice was perfectly civil and completely frigid. He turned back to Amelia. "Can we talk privately?" "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my sister," Amelia said. He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded, accepting the terms. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, "about what I did, about what I cost us, about what I was willing to throw away for something that—" He stopped. He pressed his mouth together. He was doing the thing again, the careful, managed vulnerability, but underneath it, she could see something else, something she hadn't seen before, something that looked genuinely unsteady. "I ended it," he said, "with Lauren, 3 weeks ago. It's over." The name in his mouth, the name she had only known for a few weeks that had been an anonymous woman in a gray dress for most of this ordeal, now spoken out loud in her own hallway by the man who had spent 8 months choosing that woman over her. Amelia felt it land somewhere in her chest. She kept her face neutral. "Okay," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything," he said quickly. "I know it doesn't undo what I did. I'm not here to ask you to forgive me today. I needed you to know, because I needed to do it, and I needed to tell you." He looked at her with something that was real. This time she could tell the difference now she had spent long enough studying his face to know when the performance slipped and the real thing showed through. "I'm sorry, Amelia. I'm genuinely, completely sorry. Not because you found out, because of what I did, because of what I chose, because you deserved better than what I gave you, and I knew it while I was doing it, and I did it anyway." The room was very quiet. Gracie had gone completely still in the kitchen doorway. Amelia stood in her own hallway, and she looked at her husband, her almost former husband, and she felt the full weight of his apology. She let it in. She didn't deflect it or dismiss it or use it to protect herself from feeling it. She let it land because it deserved to land, because a real apology, a genuine one, deserved to be received, even when it couldn't change anything. "I hear you," she said quietly. "I hear you, Robert." He looked at her. Something in his face shifted hope. She thought the beginning of hope, the way a man's expression changes when he thinks he's found an opening. She saw it, and she closed it gently. "An apology doesn't change the pattern," she said. "I told you that the night you got the papers. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice you made every single day for 8 months. I believe you're sorry. I genuinely believe that. But sorry doesn't rebuild what that cost me. Not the 30 nights. Not the way I spent months asking myself what was wrong with me. Not the way I made myself smaller and quieter and less in order to protect a marriage you had already left." She paused. "I deserved better while it was happening, not after." He closed his eyes. He breathed out. When he opened them, there was something in them that she recognized from the very early years, a rawness, an openness, the face of a younger Robert, before ambition had taught him to manage everything, including himself. She felt a pull of grief for that person, for who he had been and who they had been together before the distance had grown. But grief for what was lost was not the same as reason to go back. "I know," he said. "I know. I needed you to hear it, from me, in person." "I heard it," she said. He nodded. He looked around the hallway for a moment at the house they had built together, at the walls and the light and the 9 years of ordinary living that had accumulated in every corner of it. Then he looked at her one more time, and she thought he was going to say something else, but he didn't. He just nodded again. He picked up his keys. He walked to the door. He opened it. He paused with one hand on the frame. "I hope you're okay," he said without turning around. "I mean that. I genuinely hope you're going to be okay." "I know you do," she said. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Gracie came out of the kitchen doorway and crossed the hall and put her arms around Amelia without saying anything. Amelia stood in the circle of her sister's arms and breathed and didn't cry. Not this time, not because she wasn't feeling it, but because she had already cried for what this marriage had been and what it had cost her, and she was done spending her tears on the past. "You okay?" Gracie said finally. "Yeah," Amelia said. "I think I actually am." She meant it. She was surprised again by how completely she meant it. 6 weeks after the divorce papers were filed, Robert's attorney came back with a revised offer on the asset split. It was better, meaningfully better, an acknowledgement that the marital contribution argument had real weight, but it still undervalued the contribution of the years she had spent supporting a household that freed him to invest aggressively in his business when his cash flow wouldn't have otherwise allowed it. Diana called her on a Wednesday morning 7 weeks in. "He's moving," Diana said. "His last offer was closer. I think one more round gets us where you need to be." "What's your read?" Amelia asked. "I think he wants this over," Diana said. "He's not a man who likes open wounds in his life. He'll take a deal that feels fair rather than drag this out for 2 years. A pause. "Also, and I say this as your attorney, he's genuinely sorry, Amelia. I've dealt with a lot of contesting spouses, and I can tell the difference between someone performing remorse and someone actually in it. He's in it. That doesn't mean you owe him anything. It just means he's not going to fight dirty." Amelia considered that. She thought about Robert in her hallway, his carefully casual clothes, his real apology, the way his face had looked when he walked to the door. "No," she said, "he won't fight dirty." "So let's close this," Diana said. "Close it," Amelia said. The final settlement was reached on a Friday afternoon, 8 weeks and 3 days after the papers had been served. Diana called her at 4:15 and said the words Amelia had been working toward since the morning she had stood at the kitchen window and decided over coffee that she was done. "It's done," Diana said. "Final signatures pending, but we have an agreement. You're getting the house, the joint accounts, and 38% of the current assessed value of the development company's marital period growth, plus your own retirement accounts untouched." A brief pause. "It's a good outcome, Amelia. You should feel good about this." She sat at her desk, and she thought about good. She thought about what good meant in the context of a marriage ending. Not just financially, though. Diana was right that the financial outcome was fair and hard-won and hers. She thought about what she was walking away from and what she was walking away with. She was walking away from 9 years of a life that had been for most of it genuinely built on something real. She was walking away from a person she had loved completely and a version of herself that had slowly, without her full permission, learned to need his approval to feel whole. She was walking away with the house. She was walking away with financial security she had earned. She was walking away with a notepad that had 19 entries and represented the most methodical, precise, patient thing she had ever done. She was walking away with Gracie, with her mother in Asheville, with Diana's number still saved in her phone, with the knowledge of exactly what she was capable of when she stopped asking someone else's permission to be capable of it. "Thank you, Diana," she said, "for everything." "You did the hard part," Diana said simply. She hung up. She sat at her desk for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and called her mother. "Mom," she said when Carol picked up, "it's done." There was a silence. Then Carol said, "Come to Asheville." "I will," Amelia said, "this weekend." "I'll make the room up," Carol said. And then quietly, with the specific weight of a mother who has watched her daughter come through something and is only now allowing herself to say what she has been holding, "I'm proud of you, baby. I want you to know that. Not for surviving this, for who you were while you were surviving it." Amelia pressed her hand over her eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "Come Friday," Carol said. "I'll have dinner ready." She went to Asheville that Friday. She drove with the windows down and the radio up loud, unselfconsciously loud, the kind of loud you can only be when you're alone in your own car, with no one else's preferences to accommodate. She sang along to 3 songs. She stopped for coffee at a place she had never been and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes just because she felt like it, and there was no reason not to. She arrived at her mother's house at 7 in the evening. Carol was at the door before she got out of the car. And Amelia, who had held herself together for 2 months with a steadiness that had surprised everyone, including herself, walked up to her mother and let the last of the held things go. She cried on her mother's porch in the evening air, not the manageable private crying of a woman in control, but the real kind, the full kind, the kind that uses your whole body and doesn't care what it looks like. Carol held her the whole time and said nothing because Carol knew when words were the wrong thing. When it was over, they went inside. Carol had made pot roast. They sat at the kitchen table and ate and talked about Amelia's work, about Gracie, about a trip Carol was considering to visit her sister in Phoenix, about everything and nothing, about the ordinary texture of a life continuing. After dinner, they sat on the back porch in the dark. The night was warm. Carol had tea. Amelia had wine. They sat in a comfortable quiet that was the exact opposite of the 30 nights of silence. This quiet was full, not empty, held between people who knew each other completely and had no need to fill it with performance. "Do you regret it?" Carol asked. She didn't specify what it. She didn't need to. Amelia thought about the question seriously. She gave it the time it deserved. She thought about 9 years, about who she had been at the beginning of them and who she was at the end. She thought about 30 nights and what they had cost her and what they had in the end given her. "No," she said. "Not the marriage. I don't regret loving him. That part was real and it was mine and I don't give it back." She paused. "I regret how long I made myself small to protect it. I regret the woman I was becoming in those last months. I regret not trusting my own instincts sooner." "But you trusted them," Carol said. "In the end." "In the end?" Amelia said. "Yes." Carol nodded. She sipped her tea. "Your father used to say that the bravest thing a person can do is tell the truth about their own life, even when the truth is hard, even when it costs you something." Amelia thought about her father. He had been gone for 12 years. She still thought about him more days than not. "He was right," she said. "He usually was," Carol said dryly. Don't tell him I said that." Amelia laughed. Real laughter, clean and easy, the kind that didn't have anything underneath it except itself. And Carol laughed too, and they sat on the porch in the dark, laughing at a man who had been gone for 12 years, and the warmth of it was so complete and so simple that Amelia felt it like something settling back into place inside her. She slept 11 hours that night. When she woke up, the sun was already well up and she could smell coffee and something baking, and she lay in the guest room of her mother's house and she thought, this is what it feels like to rest, not just physically, all the way down, the kind of rest that requires no management. She had forgotten this. She had forgotten what it felt like to be in a life that didn't require constant management, constant performance, constant calibration of what she revealed and what she concealed. She had forgotten what it felt like to exist without an audience. She remembered it now. When she drove home Sunday evening, she took the long way. She drove through neighborhoods she didn't usually pass through, past a park she had gone to as a child, past the coffee shop where she and Gracie had met every Sunday for years, before the marriage had slowly absorbed her Sundays. She drove without a destination, without a timeline, just moving through the city. That was hers, had always been hers, would continue to be hers. She thought about what came next. Not in the anxious, urgent way she had thought about the future during the past 2 months, but in the open, curious way of someone looking at a long road that stretches out ahead of them with no particular obligation to know where it ends. She had work she loved. She had a house she was about to redesign from the inside out, starting with the guest room that was going to become a reading room and the kitchen that was going to get the good shelving she had always wanted, but had never put up because Robert thought it would look cluttered. She had her mother in Asheville and her sister across town and a lawyer's number in her phone that she hoped she would never need again. She had a self-intact, clear-eyed, and increasingly certain of what it wanted. She pulled into her driveway. She sat in the car for a moment looking at the house. Her house. Hers. She went inside. She put her bag down. She made tea. She stood at the kitchen window and drank it and watched the evening come in and thought about almost nothing. Just the tea. Just the light, just the specific, remarkable feeling of standing in her own kitchen, in her own life, with no performance required of her. The same window, the same light. A completely different woman standing in it. She had been through something. She had been through something real and hard and permanent, something that had taken 8 months of a marriage and 30 nights of rejection, and 2 weeks of the most demanding patience she had ever practiced, and 8 more weeks of divorce proceedings to survive. She had been through it, and she was still here, and she was against all reasonable expectation, not diminished. She was larger. She was clearer. She was for the first time in longer than she could name exactly, and only and completely herself. The paperwork would be finalized in 2 more weeks. The signatures would be collected, the documents filed, the legal end of Amelia and Robert Brooks officially recorded in the county courthouse, where they had once, 9 years ago, recorded their beginning. But for Amelia, the real end had already happened. It had happened on the 30th night in the dark when she had finally stopped asking herself what was wrong with her. It had happened in the bathroom mirror at 2 in the morning when she had looked at herself and recognized what she had become and decided she was done. Everything since then had just been the paperwork. She finished her tea. She washed the mug. She went to the closet in the hallway and she pulled out the box of things she had bought last year and never put up the shelving brackets, the small framed pieces she had liked and had been told didn't fit the aesthetic. She carried the box to the kitchen. She was going to put up the shelves tonight. She was starting right now. The shelves went up crooked the first time. Amelia stood back and looked at them, the brackets slightly uneven, the whole thing tilting just enough to be undeniable. And she laughed. Not the polite, managed laughter she had performed across a dinner table for months. Real laughter, the kind that comes from your stomach, the kind that surprises you. She laughed at her crooked shelves in her kitchen at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, and then she got the level out of the junk drawer, and she did it again. The second time they were perfect. She stood back and looked at them for a long time. They were just shelves, pine wood simple brackets, nothing remarkable. But they were hers, chosen by her, installed by her, slightly imperfect in the first attempt, and then corrected by her own hand, hanging in the kitchen of a house that was entirely and only hers now. She put 3 things on them: a small blue ceramic bowl she had bought at a farmer's market 2 years ago and never displayed because it didn't fit Robert's preferred aesthetic, a cookbook she actually used, and a plant she had been keeping on the floor because there had never been a surface for it. She looked at the shelves for another minute. Then she went to bed and slept 8 hours without interruption. That was how the new chapter started. Not with a declaration, not with a dramatic reinvention, with crooked shelves made right and a blue bowl finally in the light. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in late October, 10 weeks after the papers had been served. Diana called her at 9:47 in the morning. "It's official," she said. "Judge signed off this morning. It's done, Amelia." Amelia was at her desk. She had a client call in 13 minutes. "Thank you, Diana," she said, "for everything. I mean that." "You were my easiest client," Diana said, and there was warmth in it. Real warmth, the kind that doesn't belong to a professional relationship, but shows up in them anyway, when something genuine has passed between two people. Most people fall apart somewhere in the middle. You never did. "I fell apart," Amelia said, "just not where anyone could see." Diana laughed. "That counts," she said. "That absolutely counts." She hung up. She sat at her desk for exactly 3 minutes. She thought about a courthouse downtown where a judge she had never met had just put a legal end to 9 years of her life. She thought about Robert receiving the same news from his attorney at roughly the same moment somewhere across the city in his office or in his car or wherever Robert was on a Tuesday morning now that she no longer knew his schedule. She felt the weight of it. She let herself feel it fully for 3 minutes, the way she had learned to do, not suppressing it, not performing around it, just letting it be what it was. The end of something real, the loss of a person she had loved, the permanent closing of a door. 3 minutes. Then she picked up her phone. She dialed into her client call 2 minutes early. She was professional and prepared and entirely present for 45 minutes, and when it ended, she had a new project and a signed agreement, and the particular satisfaction of work done well. She texted Gracie, "It's official." Gracie replied in 11 seconds, "Dinner tonight, my place, 7 o'clock, non-negotiable." She texted her mother, "Done." Carol replied, "I love you. Come when you can. The room is always ready." She put her phone down. She went back to work. That evening at Gracie's, there were 5 women around a table. Gracie, Amelia, 2 of Amelia's closest friends from college who had driven 2 hours for the occasion, and Gracie's neighbor Paula, who had been friends with both sisters for years and who made a pasta that deserved its own celebration. There was wine, there was the pasta, there was loud, overlapping, completely unmanaged conversation, the kind that happens when women who love each other gather without agenda and without performance. At some point in the middle of the second bottle of wine, Amelia's college friend Jess said, "Okay, I have to ask, how are you actually? Not the version you've been telling people." The table went a little quieter, everyone looking at her. All of them people who had watched her move through the past 3 months with a composure they had collectively marveled at and slightly worried about. Amelia looked at Jess. She thought about how to answer honestly, which was the only way she knew how to answer anymore. "I'm good," she said. "I'm actually good. And I know that sounds like the version you're asking me not to give you, but it's the true one." She paused. "I'm also sad. Both things are real. I loved him. I built 9 years of my life around us. That doesn't disappear because he made bad choices. The grief is real." She looked around the table. "But so is this. So is right now. And right now is really good." Jess looked at her for a moment. Then she raised her glass. "To right now," she said. "To right now," everyone said, and the glasses came together, and the conversation picked back up, and Amelia sat in the middle of it, and felt something she recognized as happiness. Not the performed, managed contentment she had been producing for months, but the real thing, warm and unself-conscious and completely present. November arrived, and with it the first real cold of the season. Amelia started running again. She had run in her 20s and early 30s and had gradually stopped somewhere in the marriage, one of the 100 small things that had quietly dropped away as the marriage had consumed more and more of the space she used to inhabit alone. She started slowly, 20 minutes 3 times a week, the cold air hitting her face before the sun fully came up. By the 3rd week, she was doing 35 minutes. By the end of the month, she was running 45 minutes every other morning, and she had forgotten how much she had missed the specific feeling of her own body working hard in the dark before the day made its demands. She also started saying yes to things she had been saying no to for years. Dinner invitations she would have declined because Robert found her friends' husbands boring. A weekend trip to Chicago with Jess that she would have passed on because Robert didn't like her being away without a clear reason. A pottery class on Thursday evenings that she had seen advertised for 2 years and had never signed up for because Thursday was when Robert liked to have dinner at home. The pottery class turned out to be something she was spectacularly bad at and almost entirely loved. Her first 3 pieces collapsed on the wheel. The instructor, a patient woman in her 60s named Ruth, told her she was gripping too hard. "You have to hold it firmly enough to shape it," Ruth said, "but not so hard that you crush it. That's the whole skill, finding that line." Amelia thought about that for a while. She thought about it on the drive home and in the shower the next morning and at her desk on Friday. Finding the line between holding firmly and crushing, between loving something and needing it so much you destroyed it. She thought about all the ways she had tried to hold her marriage together, by gripping harder, by making herself less, by accepting 30 nights of rejection as evidence of her own inadequacy rather than his failure. She went back to the pottery class the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that. December brought an invitation she had not expected. It came from her company, a proposal to lead a new consulting division, a significant expansion of her role, a title and a salary that reflected the work she had been doing for years without the recognition that work deserved. Her manager called her into his office on a Thursday morning and laid it out: the division, the team she would build, the clients she would lead, the autonomy she would have. She sat across from him and listened to the whole thing and thought about 9 years of supporting someone else's ambitions and how little space that had left for her own. "I want it," she said, before he had finished explaining the timeline. He looked slightly startled. He had prepared for negotiation. "You don't want to think about it." "I've been thinking about it for 9 years," she said. "I want it." He smiled. "It's yours." She walked back to her desk and sat down and felt something move through her that was not quite pride and not quite relief, but something in between: the specific feeling of a door opening that you had been standing in front of for a long time without reaching for the handle. She called Gracie from the parking garage at lunch. "I got a promotion," she said when Gracie picked up. "What? Tell me everything." So she told her the new division, the team, the title, the number that made Gracie make a sound that was not quite a word. "Amelia," Gracie said, that is enormous. That is everything you should have had 2 years ago." "I know," Amelia said. "I wasn't ready 2 years ago." "What do you mean? Of course you were." "I was capable 2 years ago," she said. "I'm not sure I was ready. Ready is different. Ready is knowing what you want and believing you're allowed to want it." She paused. "I believe it now." Gracie was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," she said softly. "You do." January arrived, the new year, the new role, the new version of a life that was unrecognizable in the best possible way from what it had been 12 months before. Amelia threw herself into building the consulting division with the same methodical precision she had applied to the notepad, to the divorce, to the crooked shelves she had made right. She hired 2 people in the first month, both of them women, both of them sharp and ambitious, and slightly underestimated by the organizations they had come from, which was something Amelia recognized on sight now. She knew what underestimated looked like. She had been it for long enough. She settled into the new rhythms of her life: morning runs, Thursday pottery, Sunday calls with her mother, dinners with Gracie, the reading she had rediscovered, the cooking she was doing entirely for herself, now not the elaborate, effort-intensive cooking of a woman trying to save a marriage, but the simple, pleasurable cooking of someone who has remembered that food is supposed to be enjoyable. She made soup and good bread and elaborate salads, and occasionally a full Sunday dinner for no reason except that she felt like it. She thought about Robert sometimes, less than she expected. The thoughts were not the sharp, corrosive thoughts of betrayal and anger. Those had burned themselves out sometime in the weeks after the divorce. What remained was something softer and more complicated, a kind of sad understanding, a recognition that Robert had been a person with his own failures and his own fears and his own inability to do the right thing when the right thing was hardest. She did not hate him. She did not wish him harm. She thought about him the way you think about someone who was once central to your life and is now peripheral, with acknowledgement, with residual tenderness, with the knowledge that what happened between you cannot be undone and also does not need to define everything that comes after. She heard through Gracie that Robert and Lauren had not lasted past November. Gracie delivered this information in the careful, neutral tone of someone who wasn't sure how it would land. It landed quietly. Amelia noted it, thought about it briefly, and moved on. It changed nothing about her life or her choices or her sense of herself. That was how she knew she was actually healed, not by the absence of pain, but by the absence of need. She didn't need Robert to suffer. She didn't need Lauren to fail. She didn't need the story to end badly for them in order for it to end well for her. It was already ending well for her. It had been ending well for her for months. February brought the hiking trip. It had been Jess's idea, a long weekend in the Smoky Mountains. 5 women, 2 cars, a rented cabin with a fireplace, and deliberately no agenda beyond the trails and the company. Amelia had said yes before Jess finished the sentence, which made Jess laugh, because the old Amelia, the marriage-era Amelia, would have needed a week to decide and would have found 3 reasons to hesitate. They drove up on a Friday afternoon and arrived at the cabin as the sun was going down and the cold was settling into the mountains with a seriousness that cities didn't manage. They made dinner together, all 5 of them, in the small kitchen, overlapping and laughing, and ate it by the fireplace, and Amelia sat in the warmth of it and felt something she had been building toward for months without being able to name it. She felt at home, in herself. That was the only way she could articulate it later to Gracie, to her mother, to the blank pages of the journal she had started keeping in November. She felt at home in herself in a way she hadn't for years, maybe in a way she had never quite managed even before Robert, even in the time before the marriage. As if everything she had been through had burned away something that didn't belong and left only what was real. The second morning, the group split up. Jess and Paula wanted the difficult trail, the one with the elevation that promised views worth the effort. The other 2 wanted a slower morning coffee, a shorter loop. Amelia went with Jess and Paula because the difficult trail was where she wanted to be. They were 20 minutes in, working up the first real climb, when Jess stopped to adjust her pack, and a man coming down the trail moved to the side to let them pass and said, "Watch the turn up ahead, there's ice on the north side." Amelia looked up from the trail. I was perhaps 40, maybe a year or 2 older, with the kind of face that looks completely comfortable outdoors, a good coat, a pack that suggested he knew what he was doing up here. He was looking at all 3 of them as he said it, the practical warning of one hiker to others, nothing more. "Thanks," Jess said. "How's the view up top?" "Worth every step," he said. "Go early if you can, the light is better." He nodded and started back down. "Nice of him," Paula said, and they kept walking. 20 minutes later, at the ice patch he had warned them about, Amelia felt her left foot start to slide. She caught herself, grabbed a branch, righted herself, heart briefly loud in her chest. She stood still for a second and breathed. "You okay?" Jess said immediately, hand on her arm. "Fine," Amelia said. "I'm fine." She was. She was completely fine. The moment had lasted 2 seconds, and she had handled it without help, had caught herself, had steadied herself. The metaphor was not lost on her. She actually smiled at it, the small, private smile of a woman who has developed a sense of humor about her own story. They made it to the top. The man had been right about the view. It was the kind of view that silences people, the kind that reminds you that your life, for all its particular weight and significance, is also very small, and somehow that smallness is a relief rather than a diminishment. The 3 of them stood at the top of that trail and didn't say anything for a while. Then Jess said, "This is the best decision I've made in years." "Yes," Amelia said simply. On the way down, they passed the man again. He was photographing something off the trail, some detail of the rock or the light that had caught his attention. He looked up when he heard them coming. "Good view?" he asked. "You were right," Amelia said. "Worth every step." He smiled. It was an easy smile, unperformed, the smile of someone who is comfortable enough in their own life that they smile without calculation. "Always is," he said. They kept walking. But later at dinner, when the cabin was warm and the fire was going and the wine was open, Jess mentioned him. "That guy on the trail," she said. "He seemed nice." "He gave good warning about the ice," Paula said. "He had kind eyes," Jess said, looking at Amelia. Amelia looked back at her. "Don't," she said. "I'm just saying." "Jess." "Fine." Jess raised her hands. "I'm saying nothing." Amelia shook her head. But she thought about it later in the dark of her room in the cabin, the fire still going in the main room, the mountains outside doing whatever mountains do in the dark. She thought about the man on the trail and his easy smile, and she thought about what Jess had said, and she let herself consider it. Just consider it the way you consider a door you're not ready to open, but are no longer afraid of. She wasn't ready. She knew she wasn't ready. Not because she was still broken. She wasn't broken. She had been building herself back up brick by brick for months, and the building was solid now, more solid than it had ever been. She wasn't ready because she was too busy being herself to be interested in being half of something else yet. Because the life she was living, the runs and the pottery and the new division and the soup on Sundays and the shelves with the blue bowl, that life was full. It was genuinely, satisfyingly full, and she was not going to rush it toward the next thing simply because the next thing was available. She had learned too much about what happens when you need someone else to make your life complete. She fell asleep to the sound of the fire and woke up the next morning before anyone else and went out onto the porch in the cold with a cup of coffee and watched the mountains in the early light and felt with a completeness that surprised her even now entirely at peace. She thought about 30 nights. She thought about the woman who had lain in the dark, asking herself what was wrong with her. She thought about the bathroom mirror at 2 a.m, and the decision that had no words yet, and the notepad with 19 entries, and Diana's voice, and Gracie in a parked car on a Thursday morning, and her mother on the porch in Asheville, and the crooked shelves made right. She thought about the full length of it, not just the hard parts, but all of it, the entirety of a year that had broken something and built something better in its place. And she felt the way you feel when you have traveled a very long road and have arrived somewhere you did not know you were headed, but recognize immediately as where you were supposed to be. Spring came. The consulting division grew. She hired a third person and restructured the approach and landed 2 new accounts in the same week and went home that Friday and made herself a good dinner and opened a good bottle of wine and sat at the kitchen table under the shelves with the blue bowl and called her mother. "How are you?" Carol asked. "Good," Amelia said. "Actually good." "Tell me something," Carol said. So Amelia told her about the new accounts and the third hire and the pottery piece she had finally made that didn't collapse a small bowl, imperfect and entirely real. She told her about the running the 45 minutes in the dark before the day started, the way her body felt different now, stronger, more her own. She told her about a book she had finished that she wanted to send her. She told her ordinary things, the texture of a life being lived fully and with intention. Carol listened to all of it. When Amelia finished, she said, "You sound like yourself." Amelia sat with that for a moment. Like yourself. The simplest possible thing to say and the most complete. "Yeah," she said. "I do." "I've been waiting to hear that for a long time," Carol said. "I know," Amelia said. "Me too." She hung up. She sat at the table for a while. She looked at the shelves, the blue bowl, the cookbook, the plant that had grown substantially since she had finally given it a surface to live on, that had put out 3 new leaves in the winter light, as if it too had been waiting for the right conditions. She looked at the ordinary chosen details of a life that was entirely and only hers. She thought about what it meant to love yourself, not as a slogan, not as the kind of thing that gets printed on coffee mugs and greeting cards and loses its meaning through repetition. What it actually meant in practice, day by day, choice by choice. It meant the shelves. It meant the pottery class and the morning runs and the phone calls with her mother and the dinner with Gracie and the new division and the hiking trip and the no to things that diminished her and the yes to things that made her more herself. It meant all the small daily acts of a woman treating herself as someone worth treating well. She had not learned this easily. She had learned it through 30 nights of rejection that taught her in the end exactly what she was owed. She had learned it through months of a marriage dying while she tried to hold it together by making herself smaller. She had learned it through the particular surgical pain of watching a man she loved look at someone else the way he used to look at her. She had learned it at great cost, and she would not give the lesson back. 6 months later, Gracie called her on a Saturday morning. "I need to tell you something," Gracie said. Her voice had a careful quality that Amelia recognized. "Tell me." "I ran into Robert yesterday, at the market." Amelia was quiet for a second. "And he asked how you were. I said you were great. He said—" Gracie paused. "He said to tell you he hoped that was true. He said he was glad." Another pause. He looked okay, Amelia. He looked like a person dealing with what he did, not falling apart, but not easy either. Amelia thought about Robert at a market on a Saturday. She thought about the man she had married and the man he had shown himself to be, and the distance between those two things. She thought about the long, irreversible chain of choices that had led them both to this Saturday him at a market, running into her sister, her on the phone in the house that was hers, the blue bowl on the shelf, the plant with its new leaves, her own life arranged around her own preferences for the first time in years. "I'm glad he's okay," she said. And she meant it plainly, without complication, without the residue of bitterness. She meant it the way you mean a thing when it is simply true and nothing more. "That's very evolved of you," Gracie said. "That's not evolution," Amelia said. "That's just where I am. I don't have room for his pain in my life. My life is too full." Gracie was quiet for a moment. Then she said in a voice that was soft and real, "Yeah, it is." The year turned again. Amelia stood in her kitchen on a morning in early spring, coffee and hand light coming through the window, the way light does in that season, tentative and then not brighter by degrees. The plant on the shelf had grown so much she had needed to move it to a bigger pot, and the new pot sat on the counter by the window, where it got the most of the morning light, and it was doing what things do when you give them the right conditions. She stood and drank her coffee and thought about almost nothing. Just the coffee, just the light, just the plant reaching toward the window with the easy, unself-conscious confidence of something that knows exactly what it needs and has been given exactly that. She thought about 30 nights. She thought about how the 31st night had changed everything, not the night she discovered the truth, though that too, but the night after that, the morning after that, the moment she stood in the kitchen at 7 in the morning and watched her husband drive away and felt for the first time the full and terrible and ultimately clarifying weight of knowing. She thought about everything she had been afraid of losing: the marriage, the house, the life she had built around a person who had stopped being the person she had built it with. She had been afraid of all of it, and she had lost some of it, and she had survived the loss, and she had built something better on the other side of it, something that was all hers, chosen by her hands and her decisions, and her own stubborn, patient, undefeated sense of what she deserved. She was not the woman who had reached for her husband 30 times in the dark. She was not the woman who had lain awake at 2 in the morning asking what was wrong with her. She was not the woman who had made herself smaller and quieter and less in order to preserve a peace that was never real. She was Amelia Carter, 35 years old, head of a growing consulting division, woman who ran 45 minutes in the dark before the day started, terrible potter who was getting better one collapsed bowl at a time, daughter of Carol, sister of Gracie, reader of good books, maker of good soup, owner of shelves installed by her own hands in a kitchen in a house that was entirely hers. She was Amelia Carter, and she had not lost her marriage. She had saved herself. And in the end, after everything, that was the only love story that had ever truly been hers to tell.